At Brierley Manor, the clocks never struck midnight gently. They struck like warnings. Each bell rolled through the stone halls, down the servants' stair, across the portrait gallery, and into the freezing courtyard where Silas Crowe, the Duke's carriage driver, waited with the black ducal carriage under a sky full of rain. Silas had driven men through war roads, funeral roads, wedding roads, and roads where no honest man should travel after dark. But that night his hands trembled on the reins. Not because of the storm, not because of the hour, because of what Duke Rafferty Vane had said before entering the carriage. If I am not myself when we return," the Duke had whispered, "do not let me inside the house." Silas had laughed at first, a nervous laugh, the kind a servant uses when a master says something too strange to understand. But the Duke had not laughed. He had stood in the courtyard wearing a black riding coat, his dark hair wet from mist, his face sharp and pale beneath the lantern light. He was 35, feared across the county and known for three things. He never drank, never gambled, and never allowed anyone to speak of his dead brother. Tonight, he looked like a man going to meet that dead brother. Silas lowered his voice. "Your Grace, forgive me, but what does that mean?" The Duke looked toward the manor windows. Most of them were dark. Only one window burned gold. The Duchess' sitting room. Lady Eveline Vane, the Duke's young wife, was still awake. Rafferty's jaw tightened when he saw the light. "It means," he said, "that if I step out of this carriage and ask for my wife, you must look into my eyes before answering." Silas stared. "Your Grace?" The Duke turned back to him. "My eyes, Crowe. Remember them." Silas had served the Vine family long enough to know when a question would not be answered. So he looked. The Duke's eyes were grey. Cold grey, the colour of winter river water under a dead sky. Silas nodded slowly. "I will remember." Rafferty handed him a folded paper sealed with black wax. "If anything goes wrong, give this to the Duchess, only to her, not to my uncle, not to the steward, not to any priest, doctor or magistrate who arrives before dawn." Silas took the paper. It felt heavier than paper should. "Where are we going?" The Duke looked beyond the gates toward the road leading into the old forest. "To fetch a ghost." Before Silas could answer, the manor doors opened behind them. A woman stepped out beneath the portico. Lady Eveline. She was wrapped in a pale shawl, her auburn hair loose over one shoulder, her face tense with worry. She had married the Duke 8 months ago, and the servants still did not know whether to pity her or fear for her. She was beautiful, yes, but Brierley had a way of making beauty look trapped. "Rafferty," she called. The Duke closed his eyes once, then turned. "Go inside, Eveline." "Not until you tell me where you are going at this hour. That is precisely why you must go inside." She came down the steps despite the rain. Silas looked away. Servants survived by knowing when not to see. Eveline stopped before her husband. "You have avoided me for 3 days. You have locked yourself in your study. You sent every footman away from the East Wing. Now you leave at midnight with no guard and no explanation." Her voice softened. "Whatever this is, do not make me a stranger to it." The Duke's face changed, only slightly, but enough. For one breath, the cold man cracked, and the husband appeared beneath him. "I am trying to keep you alive." Eveline went still. "From whom?" Rafferty's eyes flicked toward the manor. Silas followed the glance. At an upstairs window, a curtain moved. Someone was watching. The Duke saw it too. His voice dropped. "Trust no one in this house after midnight." Then he stepped into the carriage and shut the door. Silas snapped the reins. The horses moved. As they passed through the iron gates, Silas looked back once, stood in the rain, one hand pressed to her throat, watching the carriage disappear into the black road. Inside the carriage, Duke Rafferty said nothing for nearly 20 minutes. The wheels groaned through mud. Rain struck the roof. The lanterns swung. Silas kept glancing at the small front window, but the Duke's face was hidden in darkness. At last they left the main road and entered Thornhollow Wood. No one travelled that road after sunset, not because of thieves. Thieves preferred warmer places. People avoided Thornhollow because, 12 years earlier, Duke Rafferty's younger brother, Lord Caspian Vane, had died there. At least that was the official story. A hunting accident, a frightened horse, a fall into the ravine, a body too broken for viewing, a funeral with a closed coffin. Silas had been a stable boy then. He remembered the old Duke screaming at the servants. He remembered Lady Vane fainting in the chapel. He remembered young Rafferty standing beside the coffin, still as stone, while his uncle Marquess Osbert Vale whispered in his ear. From that day forward, no one spoke Caspian's name in Brierley Manor. The carriage stopped before a ruined chapel deep inside the wood. The Duke opened the door before Silas could climb down. "Wait here, Your Grace, let me come with you." "No, but you said, I said, remember my eyes." Rafferty stepped into the rain and walked toward the chapel. Silas watched him vanish beneath the broken arch. Minutes passed, then more. The horses shifted nervously. Somewhere inside the chapel a light appeared, not the yellow light of a lantern. Blue, cold. Silas whispered a prayer. Then came voices. One was the Duke's. The other, Silas leaned forward. The other voice sounded exactly like the Duke. Not similar. Exactly. A crash came from inside the chapel. The horses reared. Silas jumped down, grabbing the lantern. "Your Grace?" No answer. He ran toward the chapel door. Before he reached it, the Duke emerged. Or someone wearing the Duke's coat emerged. Silas stopped. The man moved differently. Only a servant would notice. The real Duke Rafferty walked with controlled stillness. Every step measured, as if even the floor had to request permission to exist beneath him. This man walked with ease, almost amusement. His dark hair was wet, his face was pale, his clothes were the Duke's. But his expression was wrong. Too open, too alive. He looked at Silas and smiled. The Duke never smiled, not like that. "Take me home, Crow." Silas's skin went cold. He lifted the lantern. The man's eyes were grey. But not Winter River grey. They were blue grey. Warmer, younger, different. Silas remembered the warning. "If I am not myself when we return, do not let me inside the house." He stepped back. "Where is His Grace?" The man tilted his head. "I am His Grace." "No." The smile faded. For a moment, something dangerous showed beneath it. Then the man sighed. Still obedient after all these years. Rafferty always did inspire loyalty in the frightened. Silas gripped the lantern. "Who are you?" The man leaned closer. Lightning flashed, and in that white burst of light, Silas saw the impossible. The face was the Duke's face, but younger somehow, softer around the mouth, with a small scar under the left eye. Silas knew that scar. Everyone who worked in the stables 12 years ago knew it. Lord Caspian had gotten it falling from a pony when he was 10. Silas stumbled backward. "No." The man smiled again. "Hello, Silas." The lantern slipped from Silas's hand and hit the mud. The dead brother climbed into the carriage, and the living Duke did not come out of the chapel. By the time the carriage returned to Brierley Manor, the storm had grown violent enough to shake the windows. Lady Eveline was still awake. She heard the carriage before the servants did. She ran to the upper landing and looked down as the front doors opened. Silas entered first, white-faced, soaked, shaking. Behind him came her husband, or what appeared to be her husband. Eveline stopped halfway down the stairs. The man looked up at her and smiled. Not Rafferty's careful, restrained almost smile. A stranger's smile. a familiar stranger's smile, full of warmth and danger. "My lady," he said. Eveline's breath caught. Rafferty never called her my lady inside their home. He called her Eveline. Always, even when angry, especially when angry. The servants bowed. The housekeeper blinked. The steward frowned. From the shadows near the library door, Marquess Osbert Vale watched with narrowed eyes. Eveline descended slowly. "Rafferty?" The man's smile did not falter. "Who else would I be?" Silas looked at her desperately. His hand moved toward the pocket where the sealed letter waited. Osbert saw the movement. So did Eveline. The Marquess stepped forward. "Crow, you look ill. Go to the stables." Silas did not move. The man in the Duke's coat turned his head toward Osbert. For the first time, his smile became sharp. "Uncle," one word. But Osbert reacted as if a knife had touched his throat. His face drained of colour. Eveline saw it. Every servant saw it. The man stepped closer to Osbert. "Did you miss me?" Osbert whispered, "Impossible." The hall went silent. Eveline looked from the Marquess to the man wearing her husband's face. Then Silas pulled the sealed letter from his pocket and placed it in her hand. Osbert shouted, "Stop him!" But it was too late. Eveline broke the black wax. Inside was a note written in Rafferty's hand. "Eveline, if the man who returns looks like me but smiles like my brother, then Caspian lives. Do not trust him yet. Do not trust me fully either. And above all, do not let Uncle Osbert leave the house before dawn." Eveline looked up slowly. The man at the foot of the stairs watched her. His smile was gone now. In its place was something haunted. Something furious. Something that had waited 12 years to enter this house again. He bowed slightly. "Good evening, Duchess," he said softly. "I believe my brother has left you a great deal to discover." The first thing Eveline did was lock the doors, not with her own hands. Duchesses did not usually cross halls carrying keys like prison wardens. But that night, she took the ring of keys from the trembling housekeeper and gave orders before anyone else remembered she had the right to do so. No carriage leaves, no horse is saddled, no servant goes to the village. No one enters or exits Brierley Manor until I say so. Marquess Osbert stepped forward, furious. "You overreach, Duchess." Eveline looked at him. "Then correct me when the Duke returns." The sentence struck the hall. The Duke, not the man standing there. Not yet. The stranger in Rafferty's coat watched her with open interest. "You are sharper than he described." Eveline turned to him. "And you are not to speak as though you know me." His expression shifted. Fair. Silas stood near the door, still pale. Eveline looked at him. "Where is my husband?" Silas swallowed. "In the ruined chapel, your grace." Or he was. Alive? I do not know. The words nearly broke her composure. Nearly. But she had lived 8 months in Brierley Manor. She had learned that if a woman collapsed too early, men would build decisions over her body. So she stayed upright. Send 2 footmen and the groom to Thornhollow Chapel. The stranger said, "They will not find him." Eveline's eyes flashed. Why? Because Rafferty never intended to return tonight. Silence fell. Osbert barked, "This is madness. Whoever this impostor is, seize him." No one moved. Not because servants were brave. Because the stranger looked too much like the Duke. And because Osbert looked too afraid. Eveline stepped closer to the man. "Who are you?" He held her gaze. "Caspian Vane," a maid gasped. Someone crossed themselves. Eveline felt the name move through the house, like a ghost walking out of a portrait. "Caspian Vane is dead." "So I was informed. Prove it." The faintest smile returned. "Rafferty said you would ask that." "Then my husband is intelligent when frightened." "He is intelligent always. Frightened often. Honest rarely." Eveline's stomach tightened. You speak of him like an enemy. Caspian's expression hardened. I speak of him like a brother. That answer held too much pain to be simple. Eveline led them into the great library. Only 4 people entered. Eveline, Caspian, Silas, and Osbert, though Osbert objected loudly to being included until Eveline said, "The letter named you. You will remain where I can see you." Caspian laughed softly at that. Osbert did not. The library fire burned low. Rain lashed the windows. Portraits of dead vines watched from the walls. Above the mantel hung a painting of 2 boys. One dark-haired, serious, grey-eyed. One restless, with a scar under his left eye. Rafferty and Caspian. Eveline stared at the portrait, then at the man before her. The resemblance was no longer terrifying. It was undeniable. Caspian looked at the painting. Poor Rafferty. Even as a child, he looked like he was preparing to inherit sorrow. Tell me what happened 12 years ago. Osbert snapped. You will not entertain this lunatic. Caspian turned. Sit down, uncle. Osbert's mouth opened. Sit, Eveline said. This time Osbert obeyed. Caspian walked to the fire. I was 17 when I died, or when the family decided I had. I had discovered something in father's study. Letters, accounts, payments made through false names. I was foolish enough to tell Uncle Osbert. Osbert's face tightened. Caspian continued. He told me Rafferty already knew. He told me the family was protecting itself. He told me I must learn that noble houses survive by burying ugly truths beneath beautiful flaws. Eveline listened carefully. What truths? Caspian's eyes moved to Osbert. That the Vane estate had been funding illegal prison transports. Men sent overseas without trial, widows stripped of land, children declared dead so guardians could claim inheritance. Eveline felt cold. Brierley Manor suddenly seemed less like a home and more like a ledger written in stone. I wanted to expose it, Caspian said. I confronted my father. There was a hunt the next morning. My horse was drugged. I fell near Thorn Hollow Ravine, but I did not die. Silas whispered, the coffin. Waited. Sealed. Convenient. Eveline turned to Osbert. You buried an empty coffin. Osbert's voice was tight. This is fantasy. Caspian stepped closer. Should I describe the room beneath the west stables where you kept me for 6 nights before sending me north? Osbert's lips pressed together. Caspian's smile vanished. Should I describe the man who branded my shoulder so if I escaped, I would be taken for a transported criminal? Eveline's breath caught. Caspian unbuttoned his collar and pulled the cloth aside, just enough to show the edge of an old burned scar near his shoulder. A mark, not letters, a crest, a chained hawk. Silas looked ill. Osbert stared at the fire. Eveline's voice sharpened. And Rafferty? Caspian's face changed. The anger did not disappear. It sank deeper. My brother was told I died. At first. At first? 3 years later, he found out I lived. Eveline stopped breathing. Caspian looked at her with something almost like pity. Yes, there it is. The first wound of marriage. Discovering the man you love has secret rooms inside him. My husband knew. He found me in a labour prison in the north. I had another name by then, half a body, less hope. He bought my freedom. Eveline whispered. Then why did he not bring you home? Caspian laughed once. Bitter, because I told him I would burn Brierley down if he did. And he believed you? I meant it. The fire cracked loudly. Caspian continued. Rafferty said he needed proof before accusing Osbert. Proof the courts could not bury. Proof the old Duke's allies could not destroy. He asked me to wait. For 12 years? No. I waited 7. Then I disappeared. Silas frowned. Disappeared from where? From my brother's protection. Caspian looked at Eveline. Your husband has spent 5 years searching for me. Eveline gripped the edge of the desk. So Rafferty had not been cold because he did not trust her. He had been cold because half his life was buried under a false grave and the other half was chasing it. That did not excuse silence, but explained its shape. "What happened tonight?" she asked. Caspian's eyes darkened. "I sent word that I had the ledger, the original ledger, names, payments, signatures. I told Rafferty to meet me at Thornhollow Chapel. And he came." "Yes, where is he now?" Caspian looked toward the rain-dark windows. "That is the question." Eveline stepped closer. "You entered the carriage in his coat. He gave it to me." "Why?" "So I could enter this house while everyone thought he had returned." "Why would he do that?" "Because someone inside Brierley planned to kill him tonight before he could bring me home." Osbert stood abruptly. "This is absurd." Eveline turned on him. "Sit down." He remained standing. His face had shifted from fear to calculation. That frightened her more. "Duchess," he said softly, "you are young. Grief and confusion make women vulnerable to dramatic stories. This man is an escaped convict wearing your husband's face. Let me send for the magistrate." Caspian smiled coldly. "The magistrate who dined with you last week?" Osbert ignored him. "Think carefully. If you accept this story, you risk scandal beyond recovery. Your husband's legitimacy, this estate, your own marriage, everything becomes uncertain." Eveline looked at him. There it was. The weapon men like Osbert always used first. Not violence, reputation. "If everything in this house depends on a lie," she said, "then uncertainty is an improvement." Caspian's eyes flicked to her. This time his smile was not mocking. A knock struck the library door. Everyone turned. Mrs. Hobb, the housekeeper, entered trembling. "Your Grace!" The footman returned from the chapel. Eveline's heart stopped. And they found blood, silence. Her voice nearly failed. "Whose?" Mrs. Hobb held out a small object, a ring. "Rafferty's signet ring." The black stone was cracked. Wrapped around it was a blood-stained strip of paper. Eveline took it. The writing was rushed. "He has the wrong brother." She looked up. Caspian had gone pale. "What does that mean?" she whispered. Before he could answer, the lamps in the library went out. All at once. Darkness swallowed the room. Then a pistol cocked behind Eveline's head. Osbert's voice spoke from the dark. "It means, Duchess, that one brother was bait and the other was always the trap." No one moved. The library was black except for the faint red glow of the fire. Eveline felt the pistol close to her neck, though Osbert did not touch her. He did not need to. Fear filled the space between metal and skin. Caspian's voice came from the darkness. "Let her go." Osbert laughed softly. "You always did think shouting made you brave." "I said let her go, and I heard the dead man." Silas shifted near the door. Osbert snapped, "Move and I shoot her." Silas froze. Eveline closed her eyes, not in surrender. To listen. Rain at the windows, fire in the grate. Osbert breathing too quickly. Caspian somewhere to her left. Silas near the door, and behind the wall. A click, small, mechanical. Someone was in the passage behind the library. Brierley Manor had secret passages. Of course it did. Every old house kept sins inside its walls. Osbert did not hear it. Eveline did. She opened her eyes. "You planned this." Osbert's voice moved closer. "Obviously. You wanted Rafferty to meet Caspian. I wanted Rafferty desperate enough to do something foolish. And Caspian. A dead man is useful only once. A living dead man can be used twice." Caspian growled. "You had men waiting at the chapel." "Yes, but Rafferty complicated matters. He sent you back in his coat. Noble of him. Stupid, but noble." Eveline forced her voice steady. Where is my husband? Osbert paused. That pause gave her more fear than any answer. Alive, he said. Caspian breathed out. For now. What do you want? Eveline asked. The ledger, Caspian said. I do not have it. Osbert's voice hardened. Do not lie to me. I said I had it. I did not say I carried it. The pistol pressed closer to Eveline. You will tell me where it is. Caspian stepped into the firelight. His face looked carved from anger. No. Osbert sighed. Then the Duchess pays for your stubbornness. Eveline spoke quickly. Kill me and you lose leverage over Rafferty. Osbert went still. Good, she continued. You need him alive. You need him to sign something, transfer something, confess something. Otherwise you would not be here threatening me in the dark like a desperate man. Caspian looked at her sharply. Even in the dimness, she saw it. Approval. Surprise. Osbert's silence confirmed enough. Eveline pushed further. What is it? The dukedom. The estates. The old prison accounts. Osbert's voice was low. The Vine name survives only if someone competent controls it. Meaning you. Meaning not two damaged brothers and a wife who has been here 8 months and thinks courage is the same as understanding. The wall clicked again. Closer. Eveline kept him talking. You were afraid of Caspian because he knew the first crimes. You were afraid of Rafferty because he found proof. But why fear me? Osbert laughed. You? I do not fear you. That was his mistake. Every man who did not fear a woman spoke too freely near her. Eveline said, Then why did Rafferty write to me? The pistol shifted. The question had struck something. Caspian noticed too. Osbert answered coldly. Because my nephew developed the unfortunate habit of trusting women after marrying one. Eveline's heart moved painfully at that. Rafferty trusted her. Silently. Badly. Perhaps too late. But he had trusted her enough to put the house in her hands. From the darkness behind the bookshelf came another click. Then a voice. Low, weak, familiar. Because my wife notices what arrogant men miss. The bookshelf opened. Duke Rafferty Vane stepped through the hidden passage. He was pale, blood on one side of his face, coat gone, shirt torn at the shoulder, but alive. Eveline's breath broke. Osbert spun toward him. That was all the opening Caspian needed. He lunged. The pistol fired. The shot smashed into the ceiling. Plaster rained down. Eveline dropped to the floor. Silas tackled Osbert from behind. Caspi seized the pistol. Rafferty staggered, but remained upright, one hand gripping the bookshelf for support. Servants rushed into the library with candles. Light flooded the room. Osbert was forced to his knees, Silas and a footman holding him down. Caspian stood over him, pistol in hand, breathing hard. For one terrifying moment, Eveline thought he would shoot. Rafferty did too. Caspian. The name crossed the room, not command, plea. Caspian's hand trembled. Osbert smiled up at him through blood at his mouth. Go on, prove you are what I made you. Caspian's face twisted. Then slowly, painfully, he lowered the pistol. No, he said. You do not get credit for what I survived. Rafferty closed his eyes briefly. Eveline rose and went to her husband. She wanted to embrace him. She wanted to strike him. She settled for gripping his arm hard enough to make him wince. Where were you? Inside the walls. That is not an answer. It is a geographical truth. Rafferty. He looked at her then. Really looked. The cold Duke was gone. Only the exhausted man remained. I followed the men who took me from the chapel. They thought I was unconscious. I heard enough to know Osbert meant to draw out Caspian and force me to sign the estate authority to him before dawn. I escaped through the old tunnels. You are bleeding. I noticed. You sent your brother here in your coat and did not tell me.
There was no time. There is always time to tell your wife when dead brothers are involved.
Caspian made a sound that might have been a laugh. Rafferty almost smiled, then winced. Osbert snarled from the floor. You sentimental fools. Do you think this ends with me? Half the county signed those ledgers. Judges, bishops, lords, your father, your grandfather. Your name is built on bones. Rafferty straightened. Yes. The room quieted. Yes, he repeated. And tonight it begins paying its debts. Osbert laughed. With what proof? Caspian looked at Rafferty. Rafferty looked at Eveline. Eveline understood before he spoke. The letter, she whispered. Rafferty nodded. Not the one I gave Silas. The one I gave you weeks ago. She frowned. Then memory flashed. 3 weeks earlier, Rafferty had given her a book of poems. A cold gift. Awkward. Almost insulting. She had placed it unread on her dressing table. You hid evidence in poetry. I hoped you would read it. I thought it was your attempt at affection. It was. That is worse. Caspian laughed properly this time. Even Rafferty's mouth moved. But the moment did not last. Eveline sent Mrs. Hobb for the book. Inside the hollowed cover was a packet of documents wrapped in oilskin. The original ledger pages. Names. Payments. Prison transports. Forged death records. Caspian's false burial. Osbert's signature appeared again and again. But so did others. Powerful others. The room felt colder as the truth spread across the desk. Rafferty looked at Silas. Ride to Greyford. Wake Magistrate Bell. If he refuses to come, wake the newspaper editor. If he refuses, wake the bishop. If all 3 refuse, wake the town. Silas nodded. Yes, Your Grace, Osbert shouted. You will destroy the family. Rafferty looked down at him. No, you mistook yourself for the family. By dawn, Brierley Manor was no longer sleeping. Servants carried lamps through every corridor. Locked rooms were opened. The west stable chamber was found. Old chains still bolted to the wall. A rusted brand iron hidden beneath floorboards. False transport documents in Osbert's private desk. The magistrate arrived just after sunrise, furious at being summoned. He became less furious when Eveline placed the ledger before him and said, Read before choosing your side. He read, then sent for guards. Osbert was taken from Brierley in the same black carriage that had brought Caspian home. He did not look frightened until the servants gathered outside to watch him go. That was when he understood. Aristocrats fear courts, but they fear witnesses more. Later that morning, the brothers stood in the ruined chapel at Thorn Hollow. Eveline had insisted on coming. Neither man argued. Perhaps they had learned something. The chapel smelled of rain and broken stone. Blood darkened the floor where Rafferty had fallen. Near the altar, hidden beneath a loose slab, Caspian retrieved a second packet of papers. The complete ledger, he said. Rafferty stared at him. You told me you did not have it. I said I did not carry it. You always were unbearable. You always were humorless. They faced each other in the cold chapel. 12 years between them, a false grave, a labour prison, a rescue, a silence, a return. Eveline stood back, letting the space remain theirs. Rafferty spoke first. I should have brought you home. Caspian looked away. I would have ruined everything. Perhaps everything needed ruining. A faint smile touched Caspian's mouth. There. Marriage has improved you. Rafferty glanced at Eveline. She is alarming. She is standing right here, Eveline said. I know, Rafferty replied. That is why I said it honestly. For the first time since midnight, Eveline laughed. Not because anything was light. Because sometimes laughter is the body realizing it has survived. Caspian looked at her. You know he loves you. Rafferty went still. Eveline looked at her husband. He has a strange way of showing it. He has a strange way of doing everything. I was afraid you would become another person the house could use against me. Eveline's answer was sharp. I became that because you left me ignorant. He accepted the blow. Yes, no more locked studies. No more midnight journeys. No more poetry books full of crimes unless you tell me first. Caspian raised an eyebrow. That is a very specific marital vow. Rafferty looked at Eveline. No more. The promise was simple. Perhaps too late for comfort, but not too late for use. Weeks passed before the first public hearings began. The vain name cracked under the weight of its own history. Men who had dined at Brierley denied ever knowing Osbert. Judges misplaced memories. Bishops discovered sudden illness. Lords wrote letters full of outrage and fear. But the ledger spoke more clearly than all of them. Caspian Vane returned legally from the dead. At first, society devoured the scandal. They called him the Midnight Brother, the false corpse, the man who stepped out of the wrong carriage. Some whispered that he had come back for revenge. He did not deny it. But he did more than revenge. He testified. So did Rafferty. So did Silas Crowe, who became famous among servants for being the driver who looked into the Duke's eyes, and knew a ghost had come home wearing his coat. And Eveline? She became the woman no one in Brierley underestimated twice. When people later told the story, they always began with the carriage, they said. The driver took the Duke home at midnight, but the man who stepped out was not the man who entered. They said the dead brother returned. They said the manor shook. They said the uncle fell. All true. But the deeper truth was this. The man who entered the carriage was a duke drowning in silence. The man who stepped out was a brother carrying the proof, and by sunrise, both men had changed. One learned that secrets do not protect love. The other learned that survival does not have to end in fire. And the house that had buried one son, broken another, and deceived a wife who saw too much, finally discovered that every locked carriage eventually reaches a door. And when that door opens, the past steps out, not as a ghost, not as a rumour, but as a living man with his brother's face, and the power to make the whole house confess.